And I think let's start on our backs. So just getting comfortable on your spine here so that you can be fully at ease. And really trying to allow for your body to relax. And I think we started similarly last week. And I kind of like forcing some downtime around the holidays. So this is a nice little opportunity for some unwinding. And we'll just keep focusing on that idea of softening and letting go. So each cycle of breath is another opportunity to check in on your capacity to unwind, relax, and be at ease here. And we'll give ourselves about 40 more seconds. And now let's just extend both arms straight up towards the ceiling. And then we'll rotate so that our palms are facing down towards our feet. So zombie style, but horizontal. And then splay the fingers out nice and wide. And pull those shoulders back. And then pull the hands back to expose or attempt to expose the palms towards the ceiling. With the wider you have the fingers, the more tension you have in the fingers, the harder this is on the forearms. And then we'll relax so that the fingertips can point up towards the ceiling again. Make sure you have that good, strong shoulder engagement. And one more time, let's draw those fingers back. And then we'll relax the arms out towards cactus. Let your knees come to a bent position if they're not already. And then let's let the knees fall over towards the left. And we'll inhale our knees back to neutral.
And exhale the knees over towards the right. And we'll inhale the knees to neutral. And pull both thighs, both knees in towards the rib cage. Just for a little compression here. And we'll drop the feet back down to the mat. Kneecaps point towards the ceiling. Pick your direction. Knees fall to one side or the other, whatever side you're feeling most drawn towards. And then let's press ourselves up. 2 hands and knees, tabletop. Yeah. As you settle here, think about that forearm musculature that you've already warmed up. And make sure you're pressing into your mat with your fingertips enough so you can feel that forearm musculature. We really want that turned on. And then let's pull our belly button straight up towards the spine and bring in some contraction into the belly space. And while we're holding that little bit of contraction, still breathing, so still feeling the cycle of breath without losing the belly contraction, let's sink back into child's pose. So belly button staying back, we're using that musculature around the diaphragm and we're retracting back into child's pose. It can cause a pretty good amount of tension around the diaphragm. See if you can relax and settle in if you're feeling that resistance. And keep in mind, we are staying with our breath cycles here, really focusing on keeping the contraction in the belly and not losing our ability to breathe because of that. And let's just give ourselves maybe 30 more seconds here. And when it feels right, hands slide out in front of us. We'll pull ourselves up to hands and knees, tabletop. And as you land back in tabletop, you can release the belly, but don't release the lumbar. So the belly button can drop, but we're staying neutral in the spine. Let's curl our toes and roll back towards down dog. And now we have kind of a challenging bit of openness in the body. We've moved a lot of musculature in the middle of the front of the body, and we've moved this very weird musculature at the extremities on the arms. Find a way to expand back into that. So maybe it's a little lateral movement. Maybe it's just continually bending the knees and sinking back, tailbone back, up and back is probably a better descriptor, but really try to find this expansiveness that we've already created. And then once you can no longer get depth into the shape, let's walk ourselves forward to fold. And from fold, we'll just drop and settle. Maybe drip and settle, whatever it is. Just allowing your body, the upper half of your body, to waterfall down, to be it in as much ease as is possible. And then let's drift our awareness to our sacrum. And let's roll all the way up. So we're coming all the way up and into mountain eventually. And as we eventually do make our way into that top space, let's check our foot width and splay the toes out nice and wide. And let's inhale our hands together at heart center. With the hands staying together or desiring to stay together, we're going to lift the elbows up towards shoulder height. So just that subtle little shoulder height lift. And then imagine that we're locking in the elbows right where they are. So we don't want the elbows to be able to move, but we're going to sink the tailbone back towards hair. And so we get limited by the shoulder girdle tension and this, it's imaginary, but this energetic anchor, right? This imaginary energetic anchor that we've created. And we feel how the posterior chain gets pulled taut, kind of in a similar way where we got this middle body diaphragm space, and then rise back up and relax. And let your palms roll forward and feel the shoulders kind of drop into that space. And then make sure we have enough glute engagement so that we can be nice and tall. Let's sweep our arms up and overhead, palms facing towards one another. And then take a 1/4 fold. So we come just to that point where we get the back long again. And try to keep this length as you finish out the fold. Letting your body resettle. Tendency here is for the weight to be back. So along that posterior chain, lower half, in the heels and in the glutes. See if you can bring that into balance. And then let's plant our hands and develop some strength from the handprints and lift yourself into half lift. Then exhale back into fold. And we'll walk back into down dog. Nice work. Use that strength across the shoulder girdle. And feel back now into that additional depth you've created in your down dog. And then let's come down to hands and knees tabletop. Flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose. Let your body land. Feel your body releasing into the ease here. And then just feel that fluidity within your breath. Pay attention to whether the posterior or anterior chain is communicating more loudly with you. And then if there is a side that is speaking to you more than the other, see if you can send your breath towards the opposite side. So usually we'd be sending the breath towards kind of the angry tissue here. Let's imagine that we have the middle of the back. So that thoracic union point is kind of our point of emphasis. Send your breath right to the middle of the sternum. And try to feel your body inflate away from anything that is speaking to you, right? So away from the opposite direction of anything that's speaking to you. And then as you relax into the exhale side of the breath, Let's feel your body sinking back towards your tailbone from the point of dysfunction. Again, we'll use that same dysfunction point. Say it's the middle of the back, say it's that thoracic joint. The body is the tailbone is drifting back, and you're getting that elongation into the exhale. And then the inhale comes and it fills and expands in the opposite direction towards the sternum. Well, let's just do 2 more breath cycles here. And then when you're right, no rush here, no rush, but when you've completed that second cycle, we'll pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, we'll curl our toes, lift our seat, and roll our way back and into down dog. And then from your down dog, we're going to slide our right foot forward into lunge, ground our left heel, bring our right hand to the medial edge, big toe edge of the right foot, and let the left hand roll open towards side angle. Keeping in mind, we haven't done much of anything for the hamstrings, and we're looking to keep that torso space as our focus and expansion point. And then left hand's going to come down. Left heel spins up. Right hand plants back on its outer edge. And we'll step the right foot back into down dog. Shift and energize back into that space. And then our left foot will slide forward. Land, right heel grounds, left hand to the medial edge. Right hand reaches up into our side angle. Thinking about torso expansion again. When you feel balance left to right, right hand comes down, right heel spins up, left hand to the outside edge. Step your left foot back and into down dog. Eventually, we'll walk our way forward to the front of the mat. And inhale into half lift. And really accentuate that half lift point. Think about creating the upper back musculature or involving the upper back musculature to get that flatness. And then exhale and settle your way back and into fold. And as you settle your way back into that fold, ensure that you let the head go. Yeah, nice, Annie. So you feel the head releasing, the shoulders relaxing. And then drift your awareness to your sacrum. And let's roll ourselves a quarter of the way up. So we create just that subtlest little lift. We still have a downward angle, but flatten out and activate the shoulder musculature and the core musculature necessary to create that flatness. And then exhale back into your fold. And note how much depth, how much drop it feels like you've created, how much space you've created. Drift your awareness back to your sacrum, and we're going to roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae, really unwinding the spine as we work our way up here. And eventually finding mountain once again. Hands come together at heart center. We're going to lift the elbows back to that shoulder height space. So keeping that hand engagement, this point in space and time becomes, right, I guess space only. Time will just move past. This point in space here becomes our anchor. It's an energetic anchor. And we're going to sink back without losing that anchoring point. The neutrality here is super important. So we don't want a big upper back bend so that we can cheat the elbow position. We want to keep the core engagement. And then release the arms, but keep the leg shape and drop further into your chair space. This time without the restriction of the shoulder girdle. And then drop your torso to your thighs. Plant your hands and walk straight out into plank. And lower yourself straight down to your belly. Slide the hands forward. Elbows come right underneath the shoulders for Sphinx. So we will have our palms down. The torso and head position is just the most beneficial position for you. So we are choosing this position, the height. We are choosing the depth of the shape purely on the benefit, but almost exclusively on the sensation of the lumbar spine. If we're feeling any compression, we're just lowering until we're not feeling compression. We want to create the sensation of expansion. And on that front, remember that fingertip pressure down into your mat will help to encourage your ability to expand, and then energy from the fingertips back into your elbow pit will also encourage that ability to expand. And we're going to hold this for 30 more seconds. And then we'll relax, slide the hands underneath the forehead and find our way into crocodile pose. And breathe here into the diaphragm shelf. So this bottom shelf just below the rib cage. Think about expanding that so that the bottom edge of the rib cage is receiving your breath and expanding down into the mat. And so there's this dissatisfied lioness. And she lives in this very successful pride of lions. And she does her thing within the pride, but she never feels like she is vitally important. And because she doesn't really stand out with her speed or her strength, keep in mind, she's incredibly fast and she's incredibly powerful. She is a lion. But within her pride, she's kind of average speed and average strength. And so she feels like she does an average job within her pride. And it just has been wearing on her and wearing on her and wearing on her. And she's just not very content with her life experience right now. And the other animals of the savannah are starting to notice that. When you're ready, let's slide our hands back underneath our shoulders. We'll press ourselves up to hands and knees, tabletop. And from hands and knees, tabletop, let's slide our right foot forward into grounded lunge. And then bring your right hand to the medial edge of your right foot. And then let your left hand start to reach up into grounded side angle. And grounded side angle is a very different shape because you have a lot of compression and restriction this time in the right hip, in the forward hip. And that the hamstring isn't nearly as much of a limitator here. It's the hip capsule That really is the limiter here. If you're not feeling like that full rotation is there, just take the left hand to the left hip, and then you can just open to what is accessible. We do have that medial line on the right side here as a potential limitator as well. And then we're going to release our left hand down to the mat. Take our right hand over to the outside edge of the right foot. Curl your left toes underneath you and we'll lift up to a runner's lunge. So you should have a good amount of space on the right hip here. And I want to use that planting into your left hand. Draw your right hand up into the twist, but don't stop at your normal twist. Think about drawing that right shoulder or right hand, whatever you want to use, back over towards your left side of your mat. And then ensure that your left knee isn't dropping to do that. So we want to use the space we created in the right hip to make this possible, not cheat the left side of the body. And then right hand comes down. We'll step back into down dog, get that depth and expansiveness, and then come down to hands and knees, tabletop, sink back into child's pose. And as you sink back into child's pose, feel the difference in the left and right side of the hips and the glutes. And think about balancing that out using the neutrality of the mat underneath you. And then eventually when you're ready, fingertips slide back in front of us. We'll pull ourselves forward to hands and knees, tabletop, and we'll slide our left foot forward into a grounded lunge. Left hand comes to the medial edge, big toe edge. Right hand starts to open up into this grounded side angle. Grounded side angle again, different shape. You get this compression right in the trunk space on the forward leg side. And eventually that right hand comes down, left hand comes back to its side of the mat. Right toes curl underneath us. We'll lift our way up and we strengthen back into that right leg. Right hand plants, left hand rolls into the twist. Good strong bend in our front knee. Good strong lack of bend in our back knee. And we get that big twist. And you can carry on using that hip space to keep rolling back into an even deeper twist. Left hand eventually comes down. Left foot steps back into down dog. Wiggle back through that tailbone space. Come down to hands and knees. Flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose. So we've created and challenged this trunk space into this oblique space, into that hip capsule space. And as you're settling back into your child's pose here, really think about encouraging from the bottom of the rib cage to the belt line as your space of expansion, as your space of kind of capitulation into the fullness of this shape. From the rib cage to the belt line. And let's give ourselves just 20 more seconds here just to really feel in to that mid body, that trunk space. And when you're ready, hands are going to slide in front of us. We'll pull ourselves up to hands and knees, tabletop. From hands and knees, tabletop, press down into those fingertips once again. See if you can feel the forearm musculature activate from the beginning of class. Push your way back into down dog. Drive into the depth of that shape. Keep the energy across the finger mounds. Let's take our left foot and extend it straight back and behind us. Left foot straight back and behind us. And then we'll step our left foot forward and into lunge. And now the strength in the legs is going to be the key to this shape. So push back into that right heel and sweep your arms out towards the front of the room. And then release the hands back down to the mat. And just note that strength. Then we'll sweep our arms out towards the front of the room. Release the hands back down to the mat. Feel how that left hip flexor is kind of fighting that fatigue. Sweep yourself out. And then right hand's going to roll up. We're going to ground the right heel and open into warrior two. Get as wide as you can across the hips here. So really think about opening up, extra rolling that right quad open, keeping that lateral edge of the left thigh open as well. And then right heel spins up. We're into crescent. Drop your hands to heart center and return to mountain at the front of the mat. Or step to mountain at the front of the mat. Sweep the arms up and overhead. And exhale through forward fold. Feel the hips now release you into this forward fold. So there's all this room in the middle of the body. Make sure you transition it all the way into the head release, but really feel the hip hinge, even if you're bending the knees, right? Maybe even encouraging some knee bend to make the hip hinge work even better. And then let's plant our hands and we'll walk our way back into down dog. Right foot extends straight back and behind us. And then we'll step that right foot forward into lunge. As we land here, the left heel energizes back. And then we'll sweep the arms out in front of us. Feel that right hip flexor activate. Drop the hands back down to the mat. And there's a weight shift that happens when the hands drop down, right? So notice where your weight is shifting. And then sweep the arms back out. Feel that strength as you activate. And drop the hands back down. And one last time, sweep your arms out. And then left hand rolls up, left heel drops down, and we find our way into this big version of warrior two. We open up, and it's big kind of in the middle of the body, not necessarily big as we normally think of our warrior twos, where we grind that back heel further or we take the collarbones out wide, but big across this medial line expansiveness. Really think about opening up big hip rotations. And then left heel spins up. We find our way to crescent. Dropping the hands to heart center, we will step to the front of the mat. Sweep our arms up and overhead. And then exhale through forward fold. As you find your way into that forward fold, think about the middle body release and the middle body releasing all the way to the head release, and everything culminating in this capacity to expand at the hip hinge into the maximum depth of your forward fold. Plant our hands, we'll walk back into plank. Fingers are wide, fingertips engaged. Slowly, gently, delicately lower yourself to your belly. As we come down to the belly, let's once again go towards Sphinx. So elbows slide forward, palms down. Collarbones broad. Then adjusting the torso positioning so that you have the most ease in your lumbar. And remembering, although I didn't remind us the first time through, right? Glutes also play a role in protecting the lumbar. So maybe you use positioning as your first line of defense. Maybe you use glute engagement as your first line of defense. But we want to feel the capacity to expand. So fingertips pressing actively into the mat and retracting back towards the elbow pit. And then we'll relax, slide our hands underneath our forehead and let our forehead come and rest in crocodile. So one day, one of the old wise elephants comes over to this lioness, and she says, we've been watching, you've been upset, you've been unhappy. What's going on? Is there anything that the elephants could offer you to make you feel better? This lioness is like, no, I'm not happy with what I'm doing. I'm not happy with my life. I'm not happy with my place. And the elephant says, okay, well, what about your life? What about your place? And she says, well, I watch the cheetahs and they can run so fast. And I watch the water buffalo and they're so big and they're so strong. And she kind of shakes her head and she shakes off this ant from her neck. And she says, I watch the ants and they're like so incredible in their community. They're so tight knit. They can do anything. Because I don't really have any of that. And the elephant says, okay, well, tomorrow at sunrise, let's go out on the savannah together and we'll watch the savannah and see what really happens. When you're right, when you're ready, let's slide our hands back underneath our shoulders. We'll press ourselves up to hands and knees tabletop. And from hands and knees tabletop, curl your toes, lift your seat, find your way back into down dog. One last time. And let's walk our way forward and into fold. Inhale to half lift and hold it. Inhale up 3/4 of the way up. So we get that angle, but still good, strong back engagement. And then release yourself to the 25% fold. So, or 75% fold, depending on how you want to define this. 25% lift, 75% fold. How about that? And so you get that steeper angle with good, strong back engagement. Now inhale to half lift. And inhale all the way up to mountain. And as you get the spine to click into neutral, make sure you feel that glute engagement help lift and drive you up. Hands come together at heart center. We'll lift our elbows to shoulder height one last time. Anchor energetically in place and sink the tailbone back away from that anchor. See if you can find a little bit more depth this time. And then open your arms out towards cactus and sink into that depth. Keep the weight balance across the toe mounds and the heels. And really think about depth. Let the hands drop. Let your hamstrings press back. Inhale to half lift. Exhale all the way to fold. Sink the seat to the heels for Malasana. And let's extend our legs out in front of us. And as the legs extend out, follow them forward into a fold. And remember that although we have some room in our fold here, it's not hamstring space. We did some forward folds, but we didn't really ever put the pressure on the hamstrings. We never extended beyond mountain into full hamstring requirement. So let's remember that the knees can bend and maybe even encourage that as you feel the torso getting into its space. And then we are all going to bend our knees enough that we can grab the toes. So if you're fully extended and you can grab the toes, great. If you're fully bent and you can grab the toes, also great. Wherever we're comfortably able to grab our toes, and ideally lock our finger mound and our toe mound. So I like this little mobilization. And if we can lock there, or if we're on the toes, we're going to start to push the toes forward. And as the toes go forward, feel that traction mechanism in the spine. We get that expansion in between the vertebrae, kind of the reward for the space we've created. And really note how that space, where that space is located. Where are we expanding? Is it the area that we worked so hard on, the trunk, where we're now able to mobilize the spinal column? Or are you feeling it somewhere else that needs more love and attention? And we'll just give ourselves 10-ish seconds here. And then we'll walk ourselves up in a seat. And think about getting all the way into that vertical spine. And then let's lower ourselves onto our back. Where we can really appreciate what we've done, but also how different tonight's practice was. Pretty intensely focused on this mid-body region. Note the lumbar and if it's arching away from the mat or if it's laying neutral against your mat. Note the musculature that travels over the thoracic joint and see if you can get it to relax. And then once you get the length of the musculature to relax, then start thinking about relaxing into the width so that more and more of your spine can connect with your mat. And we'll give ourselves just 30 more seconds here. Eventually, we'll inhale our knees into a bent position if they're not already there. And start to move the knees laterally. I am saying move instead of rotate because it might feel more appropriate for this movement to be quite small. If it feels good for you to go into full rotation, feel free. But just move towards and into what feels really good. And so the next morning at sunrise, this elder elephant and this lioness meet. And they climb up onto this little cliff so they can overlook the savannah, and they watch a cheetah try to chase down an antelope. And the cheetah's very fast. This antelope was just a bit faster, and it gets away. And the cheetah kind of collapses over in exhaustion, panting under the hot sun, hungry. And after a little bit of time of watching the cheetah, they go down towards one of the watering holes. Next time the knees move or land over on the left side, let's go into a full twist towards the left if that feels good. If it doesn't, just let the left leg open up and keep the right knee pointed towards the ceiling. So either a full twist or just the left knee, whatever feels best for your spine. And so they go over to this watering hole. It's kind of middle of the dry season. Watering holes are starting to get smaller and smaller. And they watch the water buffaloes. They try to wade into this watering hole. And immediately the crocodiles start to move, mobilize. And the water buffalo leave the area. And they head over to this next watering hole that's packed full of hippos. And the hippos keep the crocodiles away. When you're right, when you're ready, let's bring our knees back to neutral, whatever we chose to do. And then we'll work over the second side. So either right knee or both knees falling towards the right. And so these water buffalo, they're huge, strong water buffalo, try to get into this watering hole, and the hippos are having none of it. And the hippos, with their massive size and strength, easily scare off the water buffalo, who walk away kind of unfulfilled. And they take maybe just a step or two before they find this huge anthill. And with one nonchalant little swipe of her trunk, the elephant knocks over 3/4 of the anthill. When you're right, when you're ready, when you feel balanced, let's bring our knees back to neutral. We'll ask ourselves if we need anything, want anything, desire anything before Shavasana. If there's anything that would benefit our body, our practice, let's offer that. And then when you are ready, as you're ready, let's eventually find our way into some stillness. So she knocks over 3/4 of the anthill, and the ants just kind of look up at the elephant and they're like, oh, it's ridiculous. And then they immediately start grabbing these little pebbles and carrying them. And these little pebbles to ants are, massive, like carrying a boulder. And they pick up a pebble and they put it back on the hill, and then they go and grab another and another and another and another. And the ants, all of the ants, this entire community, spends the rest of the day rectifying this one swipe from the elephant. And this lioness and this elephant watch the ants complete this task, just tirelessly working to rebuild the sandhill. When you're right, when you're ready, finding your way into that stillness that can be your version of Shavasana tonight. And so as the sun is starting to slowly set for the savannah, this elderly elephant asked the lioness, what did you see today? I understand the point of this exercise, elephant. Every creature of the savannah has its own life and its own challenges, and also everything it needs to be content. Elephant nods and says, and you have all the ingredients for contentment as well. You have your food, you have your water, you have your shelter, you have your community. Now make it so. We'll start to bring some movement into our fingers and our toes, into our wrists, and our elbows, ankles, knees. Shoulders, hips, neck, head, jaw, eyes. And eventually the entirety of the body will move, and we'll utilize that movement to transition from the shapes we are in back into a seat. In this seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes closed. And with our next inhale, we'll bring our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, and we be grateful that we have all the ingredients necessary to be happy, and make that so. Thank you so much for being a part of this evening's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Monday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you being here. Have a beautiful Thanksgiving. Have a beautiful rest of your week. I'll be back on Sunday to recharge, and we'll be back on Monday to move again. Love you. See you soon.